to the eye. The TD-OCT measures the interference between the two waves. It is limited by the need for a moving mirror because the eye has to remain relatively fixed, and thus an examination cannot reasonably take more than a few seconds. SD-OCT, on the other hand, measures the interference spectrum between the two reflected beams of broad spectrum waves, which is analyzed mathematically by the Fourier transformation. With SD-OCT, the reference mirror no longer has to move, which accelerates the process 50 to 100-fold. As a result, much more accurate measurements can be made during a reasonable examination time. SD-OCT collects up to 55,000 A scans per second with an EXA resolution of 5 microns. The fastest time domain scanners can measure 17,000 A scans per second. Because of the large data cubes SD-OCT obtains, it quickly reduces test-with-test variability, allows three-dimensional reconstruction and alignment, improves registration, and facilitates test-with-test comparisons. SD-OCT is reliable, sensitive, fast, non-invasive, non-contact, and safe. The images are reproducible. Scan acquisition is rapid and simple. SD-OCT has been shown to have better diagnostic ability for glaucoma and its progression than the TD-OCT. The various models of the SD-OCT, I don't know which one you have in your center. You have here the Optoview, you have the Carl Zeiss here, then you have the Heidelberg Engineering, the Optos OCT SL, then, and Topcon and Nidec are shown here. Others are the Ceros and the Canon. SwepSource is yet another OCT technology. Compared to the spectral domain OCT, provide even better resolution and faster scanning and repeatability. Now, interpretation of the OCT images. The clinician, first of all, who reads or would like to be reading OCT scan printouts, should note that the scans obtained with different instruments differ in their data presentation. Their presentation of data depends on the hardware and the software of the machine. It's advisable to get familiar with the machine being used at the outset, with particular attention to the individual nuances specific to that machine. It's also highly recommended to have an informed and able technician to discuss these aspects clearly during the installation process, including the preferred scanning protocols for that machine. Scans between different OCT instruments cannot be used for comparison. You cannot compare Nidec with Optoview and so on. For example, the peripapillary retinal nerve fiber layer is measured by a collection of data points in a circle around the optic disc, and the diameter of the circle varies with each instrument. Now look at this. This is measurement of the peripapillary retinal nerve fiber layer thickness as measured by various OCT machines, by Topcon, by Ceros, by Spectralis, by RTView. So a patient brings data from this machine, and you want to compare with the one he has done with this machine. It's not possible. Now, secondly, when analyzing the printout, clinicians must be cautious if the patient falls outside the normative database, as they may misinterpret the findings based on the colors of green or red that suggest normal or abnormal. One of the major limitations of OCT is a narrow range of the normative database for each OCT manufacturer. Each manufacturer has a proprietary normative data that can range from 201 to 480 subjects. The ethnicities of the subjects included in the databases are generally not diverse. The normative data is also limited regarding the included age range and magnitude of refractive error. Red disease is a misinterpretation that occurs when a normative database is applied to patients who should not be considered normal. I mean, these patients have issues. Example, those with high myopia. High myopia is not, high refractive errors are not taken into consideration in the normative database. Now, green disease occurs in patients who have normal global values such as an average retinal nerve fiber layer thickness, but have small focal defects that are missed. So the machine labels it as green disease while the patient actually is in trouble. Now, thirdly, in spite of the objectivity of the spectral domain OCT, the clinician should still correlate his findings with those from clinical examination. We can never stop examining the optic nerve head. It's very important. We need to keep sharpening our skills on that because we need to correlate the findings from both. Finally, to be able to interpret the OCT images, the clinician needs to understand the significance of the data on an OCT printout. The pattern of data presentation varies from machine to machine, but the principles are the same. The data displayed on the OCT scan printout per machine depends on the protocol selected. The protocol selected depends on the pathology being investigated and the type of information required. So with OCT, you can get information on the macula, the peripapillary region, including the retinal nerve fiber layer and the optic nerve head region. Now, with the OCT scan printout before you, irrespective of whether it's a macular report or optic nerve head or retinal nerve fiber layer or GCC, whatever report you have before you, the first step is check the patient details. These are the name, age, and gender of the patient. Because the normative data is based on age of the patient, confirm that the accurate age was keyed in. Confirm that the patient details are correct, that you're not reading the wrong OCT report. Then step 2, check the scan protocol. Identify the scan protocol. Was the appropriate protocol selected? There are different scan protocols for either the retinal nerve fiber layer, the macula, or the optic nerve head. Again, selecting the same scan protocol is crucial for follow-up assessment. Now, this is what the machine will show you, the various scan protocols which you should apply at the outset of the test. For the macular scan protocols, you have the radial lines. For retinal thickness or volume analysis, if that's the information you want, this is what to select. Macular thickness map, similar to the radial lines, will give you information on the macular thickness. The fast macular thickness is a quick protocol which takes only 2 seconds, useful in patients with poor cooperation. Then you have other things on that machine, raster lines, repeats, and so on. They give you, they help you to get the accurate information. Now these are the data. Now the scan protocols for the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness measurement. You have the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness circle scan. You have the fast one, which is faster than this, but similar. Concentric 3-ring, the retinal nerve fiber layer map, proportional circles. So depending on the information you need, you have to select the appropriate protocol. You would have read through the manual to know the information each of these protocols gives. So on the printout before you, was the appropriate protocol selected, knowing what the information each one gives. Now step 3, review the scan quality. Although the quality of imaging is clearly crucial in OCT, it is not straightforward because less than 1/1,000,000 of the incident light from the laser is reflected towards the sensor. However, there are some reliability indices for determining the quality of the scan. These are the signal strength, the scan position, the algorithm performance, the quality of the shadowgram for this scan. Now, the signal strength confirm. If you looked at the patient details, you've checked the scan protocol, what you're looking at now is the image quality. This is before you start looking at the data proper. Confirm that the signal strength is high enough. Signal strength is a key indicator of image quality. Quality scan interpretation cannot be achieved without acceptable signal strength. I have some printouts I managed to borrow from people. It just helped me spread this. Please, I would like to get these printouts back. You know, there are various parts. So just for us to be looking at something, there are not enough copies, but whoever gets it. So, imaging quality is expressed in terms of the signal strength, which must be greater than 6/10 with the Ceros HGOCT calcite, or 50 with the Optoview, With the Ceros HGOCT, signal strength ranges between 1 and 10, with 10 representing optimal scan quality. These are printouts, different reports, macular, optic nerve head. I just got it from different, I couldn't make more copies. It's just for us to be looking at certain structures or certain areas I've been mentioning here. Now, images with signal strength below 5 should not be considered suitable for analysis. Signal strength of 7 or above for uniformly bright scan quality should be the goal. Acquiring scan with maximum possible signal strength is recommended when you are looking at retinal nerve fiber layer thickness. A poor signal is often responsible for underestimation of the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness. Now, after having checked the signal strength, the next reliability index, you check the scan position. It is important to position the center of the scan circle at the optic disc center. Retinal nerve fiber measured at the center. So you have the graphic representation of the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness within this green area. Now, the scan in the second analysis is of the same eye, but the scan is not well centered, and therefore the analysis is abnormal. You see the black line now outside the green, just not within this normative database, outside. So this is what can happen when you have a scan displacement and it gives you incorrect information. Where the scan is not well centered, you may have to repeat the scan. Now the next reliability index is the algorithm performance. There are software for relevant algorithms installed in the machine. For macular scans, for example, the borders of algorithm should fit to the internal limiting membrane and the photoreceptor inner and outer segments. If algorithm has failed, then the quantitative data should be disregarded. So these are all the checks we have to perform before we start interpreting our data. It's not just enough to see a scan before, a printout before us, and you jump into looking at, is it normal or not normal. Now, a shadowgram, this is seen on optic nerve head scans. So this is a shadowgram. It's a surface image of all the aligned B scans. The OCT scan produces both A scan and B scans in its optics. This shadowgram plays an incredibly important role in the analysis of these scans, giving an indication of whether the analysis performed is likely to be reliable. In a reliable scan, the shadowgram will appear sharp and will show no signs of fixation errors or blinks. Fixation errors, blinks, and poor scan quality will all result in reduced diagnostic accuracy. Therefore, the scan should be repeated if any of them is detected. Now, you have checked for the patient details, the scan protocol, and the image quality. Now think of what the scan before you is. If it's a macular OCT scan printout, let's take it this way. The data is presented in colors and grayscale. I don't know which of you has the tomogram of the macular scan. That's okay. Now, to be able to interpret the macular OCT scan printout, the clinician must familiarize himself with the histological layers of the retina. Sometimes we look at those colors, we just wonder, for God's sake, what is this? And this is a normal retina, you can see. I think one of the printers has this. So this is a normal retina. You see the fovea here. So this is a macular scan because they zero down on looking at the retina around the macula. Now, layers of the retina are shown on OCT. These correspond with the histological layers anatomically. Now here, you have this is the vitreous. This black area here is the vitreous. What you're seeing, these white zones are the vitreal floaters. And then you have the internal limiting membrane, that's a line here. Then you have the external limiting membrane, that is here. The internal is here, the external is here. And then the next one you have here, this red area is a nerve fiber layer. That's a red area. And then the next area after that, green, is the ganglion cell layer. Then after that, you have, after colors, what the colors stand for. They are not just there for the fun of it or to make it a color picture. No. The colors stand for something. Then after the retinal RPE, you have the Bruch's membrane, then you have the choriocapillaris, Haller's and Sattler's choroid layer. So it's very important to understand what these layers are on OCT. So you have the scan before you, it's like this. You need to know what each one. This is the retinal nerve fiber layer, this is the ganglion cell layer, this is the inner plexiform layer, then this is the outer nuclear layer, then you have the retinal pigment epithelium, you have after that the Bruch's membrane, you have your choroid. So it's important to know this. Then you have the fovea, which is V-shaped. Now this is another presentation, another picture of that. Now this color coding in OCT scan printer, different colors represent degrees of light scattering from different depths of the retina. Highly reflective areas, that is areas of maximal optical reflection and back scattering, are shown in bright colors, white, red, yellow. Those with low reflectivity, that is areas of minimal signals, are represented by darker colors, blue, black. Intermediate reflectivity is shown in green. Now, the nerve fiber layer, as we saw, red, is a highly reflective area. The sensory retina is green, as intermediate reflectivity. The retinal pigment epithelium choriocapillaris complex, highly reflective, so it's shown in red. So that's the picture again for us to put it together now. So you see red, highly reflective, intermediate reflectivity, and so on. Are we together? Okay. So this is the grayscale. I told you the presentation is in color scale and the grayscale. So you can have a picture like this. This is the grayscale of the macula. You still have the retinal anatomy well outlined. The retinal nerve fiber layer, the ganglion cell layer, the inner plexiform layer, and so on and so forth. So this it just goes on like that. But this one is the gray scale. The color scale looks beautiful, but I tell you, it's better to use the gray scale during interpretation. But let's go on. More on the retinal anatomy. 4 distinct hyperreflective lines are seen in the outer retinal layers of a spectral domain OCT scan of a healthy eye. These 4 hyperreflective lines should always be identified when evaluating a macular scan. What are these layers? From right to left, this is the external, remember this is the retinal nerve fiber layer, ganglion cell layer, inner plexiform layer, and so this is the outer nuclear layer. Here you have the first hyperreflective line, external limiting membrane. The next hyperreflective line is the ellipsoid zone, the junction of the inner and outer segments of the photoreceptor. Then you have the interdigitation zone, which is another hyperreflective, and then you have the RPE. So these 4 hyperreflective lines must be identified when you are interpreting your OCT scan. It helps you actually identify which structure you're looking at that has a pathology. Now, the most anterior band is the external limiting membrane, as you see. This layer is located between the outer nuclear layer and the photoreceptor inner segments. That is, is located between the outer nuclear layer and the photoreceptor. So this is the external limiting membrane. Between the outer nuclear layer and the ellipsoid zone, where you have the junction of the inner and outer segments of the photoreceptors. The external limiting membrane is made up of junctional complexes between Miller cells and the photoreceptors. Then the second hyperreflective line, called the ellipsoid zone, is the bright line anterior to the retinal pigment epithelium. That's the ellipsoid zone. We can see the ellipsoid zone. That's it. Next reflective line. This zone is a junction between the inner and outer segments of the photoreceptors, IS/OS junction, and is believed to consist of the mitochondria located in the outer portion of the inner segments of the photoreceptors. Then the third hyperreflective line consists of an amalgam of the cone outer segments as they interdigitate with the RPE. So that's the third hyperreflective line. Now, the fourth one is the retinal pigment epithelium. So, please note, after you've understood all this, usually the distance between the external limiting membrane and the ellipsoid zone is significantly less than the distance between the ellipsoid zone and the RPE. So if the distance kind of changes, something is happening. It's also important to note that there is a significant correlation between the degree to which the external limiting membrane and ellipsoid zone are intact and the patient's visual acuity. In other words, if the external limiting membrane and ellipsoid zone are spared in a macular pathology, the visual acuity will still be normal. If, however, the external limiting membrane and ellipsoid zone are damaged and clinically there is nothing observed on fundoscopy, the patient's visual acuity will drop. So you begin to wonder what's happening. The reason is because these two structures are affected, even though you don't appreciate anything on fundoscopy. The external limiting membrane and ellipsoid zone can be disrupted in conditions arising from the deep retina, such as the AMD, as well as inherited ones, such as dystrophies of the photoreceptors. Now, there's another anatomy which we must be aware of, which is normal. This is another picture, grayscale of the retinal anatomy. Now, Here you have, if there's a focal elevation of the external limiting membrane and the ellipsoid zone or the ISOS junction. There's a focal elevation. You see the focal elevation slightly elevated around beneath the foveal pit. So there's a slight elevation, and the ellipsoid zone too. There's ellipsoid zone. There's also a slight elevation. These are normal. Those elevations are normal. Now, this external limiting membrane and the ellipsoid zone are often absent in SDTO-CT scans of suboptimal image. So that could be another index of the quality of your scan. When these hyperreflective lines, the external limiting membrane and the ellipsoid zone are absent, you know that the quality is poor. If you check the signal strength, it may be less than 5 and other aspects of quality. Now, the normal foveal profile is a slight depression in the surface of the retina. It has a V-shaped contour. Very important, we know that. So that's the V shape here. Generally, it's preferable to study images in grayscale instead of the conventional pseudo-colors we've seen. This allows us to evaluate slight variations in the intensities of gray to distinguish details that are easy to miss. Now, analyzing this macular scan. We now understand the anatomy. We are now looking at the report before us. First of all, we should carry out a qualitative analysis, then a quantitative analysis. In qualitative analysis, you're looking at the overall retinal structure changes in retinal outline, the morphologic changes. You're looking at for anomalous structures, epi, intra, subretinal. They look at the reflectivity study, hyper, hypo, and shadow areas. Then the quantitative analysis gives you information on the thickness, the volume, and the shadow areas. So the qualitative analysis, looking at carrying out the morphologic study. 4 questions that will guide you in the analysis when you're doing your qualitative study. How does the vitreoretinal interface appear? How does the pre-retinal area appear? Secondly, what is the foveal contour like? You're trying to analyze the macular OCT scan qualitatively. You've checked everything, you understand the retinal anatomy. Everything is okay. The scan is of good quality. Patient details are all right. The scan protocol is right. Now, what am I looking for? How do I go about it? These are the questions that will guide you. The third question, is retinal architecture altered? Is the uniformity of the RPE choriocapillaris complex layer disrupted? So, for purposes of analysis, the OCT image of the macular scan can be subdivided vertically into 4 regions, or even the retina. The pre-retinal region, the epiretinal region, the intraretinal region, the subretinal region. So that helps you to have a systematic approach to looking at analyzing these reports. The pre-retinal profile, for example. This is a normal, this is what it should be. A normal pre-retinal profile is black space. You see a black space. It's the vitreous. The normal vitreous space is translucent. Those small faint things you saw before it in one of the pictures are just noise causing that. They are nothing. So how does the vitreoretinal interface appear? How does this area appear? Look at this one. Having looked at the anatomy, you see there's something wrong here. The fovea is elevated, and there's this membrane elevated. This pre-retinal space now, instead of just being dark and translucent, there's something intruding into it. This is a pre-retinal membrane with traction on the fovea. So the fovea has lost its V shape. Now, the posterior vitreous detachment. This is the pre-retinal area. There should be nothing there, black translucent, but you can see this detachment there. Now, the foveal profile. This is the normal foveal profile. How is the contour? What is happening there? So there's deformations in the foveal profile can occur with macular pucker, macular pseudo-hole, macular lamellar hole, and so on. So what is the foveal contour like? That's the next question. You've taken care of the pre-retinal area. Look at the fovea now. Obliteration of the normal foveal contour can be caused by pulling from overlying membrane or pushing from an underlying retinal fluid. So, and you can also have widening of the foveal contour where you have foveal thickening. So it's not just the dimension, it becomes thinner and then gets wider. So it tells you something is happening. Now this is where you have a macular cyst. The V shape is lost. You see this cyst here. That's a macular hole stage 1. No depression and the cyst is present. You have lost the V shape. Now this is a macular hole stage 2, partial rupture of the retina, increased thickness. Then here you have the stage 3, you see it all. The most important thing is that we lost that V shape and so on. Then here you have the stage 4, complete hole, edema at margins, complete posterior vitreous detachment. Now this is a serous pigmented epithelial detachment. You can see something pushing off the RPE, pushing off the vitrea, the fovea. So when they're losing the foveal contour, can be either something pushing from the retina or something pulling from above. Are we together? So we've looked at that. The next one is the intraretinal profile. For the next question, is the retinal architecture altered? What is happening? You can have something happening intraretinal. This one is subretinal. Intraretinal within the retinal architecture, or subretinal below this RPE. So structures, anomalies that can affect that: choroidal neovascular membrane, diffuse intraretinal edema, drusen, hard exudates, and so on. So this is an example. So the intraretinal architecture is altered by this choroidal neovascular membrane. Here you see what is happening here. Is no longer the beautiful picture we see with all the structures lying side by side. Here you see subretinal fibrosis. The whole thing is distorted, and then the V shape is also distorted. And here DME classification based on OCT can classify the diabetic macular edema based on OCT. You have the spongy swelling of the retina, the cystoid macular edema, serous detachment, and taut posterior hyaloid membrane. So see what we have here. This is the sponge-like swelling of the retina, and this is the cystoid macular edema. This is the vitreomacular traction. So are you appreciating all this? So once we get the anatomy right, it's very easy to understand what we are seeing. Sometimes you may have multiple pathologies, but because you know what the normal retina is, you can always pick up that something is wrong with this OCT and try to make a diagnosis also from your clinical findings. This is a retinoschisis. Sorry. This is a retinoschisis. You can see that splitting there. This is a retinal detachment. You can see that. Now, done with still with the qualitative analysis, we now review the hypo and hyper reflectivity, identify those 4 hyper-reflective lines, look out for shadow areas. Shadow areas occur when there's something preventing light rays from getting to an area or reflecting. So like hemorrhage, it prevents that area, it absorbs the light rays, and that area is seen like a dark area. So when you see that, something could be happening. Now the quantitative analysis. Here you review the data presentation on the macular thickness and the volume. You would have selected the protocol for that, and the information you have on the printout, you also look at it. So shadow areas where blood vessels or lesion obscure the passage of light, resulting in dark areas. That gives you the shadow. Now, correlate your findings with your clinical signs. What have you seen on your OCT printout? How does it agree with what you've seen on fundoscopy and so on? Now, we're done with the macular scan OCT. I hope we all have an idea now of how to go about it. I believe that when we get back to our centers and do more practice, we'll get to understand it better. Now, let's look at the optic nerve head and retinal nerve fiber layer scan printout. Most times they come together. This is an important report for the glaucoma clinician. The optic nerve analysis software for Optoview Spectral Domain OCT provides clinicians with 3 sets of data for glaucoma evaluation. The optic nerve head analysis measures the disc area, rim area, and cup to disc ratio, horizontal and vertical. In some scan reports, you find the cup area, the disc area ratio, the volume, the rim volume, nerve head volume, and cup. Then the next one, the peripapillary retinal nerve fiber layer analysis measures the average retinal nerve fiber layer thickness, hemifield retinal nerve fiber layer thickness, and quadrant retinal nerve fiber layer thickness. These are all provided by the software in the Optoview OCT. The other scans, I'm sure, have that. Topcon I heard is very good. Before I left Enugu, I saw one from Canon, which is also good. They have the macular region ganglion cell complex analysis, which measures the average GCC thickness, hemifield GCC thickness, focal loss volume, global loss volume. Now, the optic nerve head and retinal nerve fiber layer parameters are derived from the optic nerve head scan, and the GCC parameters from the GCC scan. So look for the protocol accordingly and apply and select it. The normative limits are always adjusted for age, and in the cases of optic nerve head, are also adjusted for optic disc size. Now you have the report before you, the report on the optic nerve head and the retinal nerve fiber layer. You've checked, of course, the patient details, the scan protocol, and indices from image quality. The next step now, review the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map. That is the first thing you do. So with the macular OCT scan, we did a qualitative analysis and then a quantitative. Now for this one, look at the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map. Let's see. That's the kind of thing you see in some of your scan reports, and you will just wonder, oh God, what's all this? Each of these has its own significance. So that's the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map for the right eye. That's the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map for the left eye. This is another presentation of the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map. In another OCT machine, you have it presented this way. In another one, in the previous one, you saw how it's presented. So this is the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map. This is the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map. This shows us the scan position. These are the tomograms when the scan was going on. So what exactly is this retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map? What's the significance? It's also known as temperature thickness plot or temperature thickness map. These are the various things. So the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness is calculated between the inner plexiform layer, if you remember what we saw, and the outer edge of the retinal nerve fiber layer. The thickness of the parapapillary nerve fiber, retinal nerve fiber layer is measured from the zone 3.4 millimeter from the center of the disc. The temperature thickness plot for this scan or the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map is a topographical display of retinal nerve fiber layer thickness. It shows the patterns and thickness of the nerve fiber layer within 6 millimeter by 6 millimeter cube on the scan. It gives a representation of the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness across the disc scan area, with thicker areas appearing as warmer colors, yellow and red, and thinner areas as cooler colors, black and blue. Because they use warm and cold, that's why they call it temperature thickness plot. So an hourglass shape of yellow and red color is typical of normal eyes. Okay, so the observation of the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map can show whether the patient has a normal retinal nerve fiber layer thickness pattern and highlight any areas of thinning. When you see yellow and red, it is good thickness. When you see green, when you see blue, black, that means that area is thin on the thickness map. Retinal nerve fiber layer thickness measures should not be relied upon if scan quality is low. We've emphasized that a lot. In addition, the high reflectance of blood vessels can cause automated segmentation. Segmentation is like splitting the layers into two so that it's scanned. It's not really like anatomical dissection, but taking it layer by layer to miscalculate. So the high reflectance from blood vessels can cause the automated segmentation to miscalculate retinal nerve fiber layer thickness measure, often making the retinal nerve fiber layer appear thinner around the major blood vessel. One should also take that into consideration when analyzing. So now let's go back to this map. You see the colors? Let's go back to the real chart. You see the bright colors, yellow. You see yellow here. Here you don't have much of yellow. So there's something going on here. It's not as thick as it should be, because the colors you're seeing here are more of the cooler colors. Are we together? Yes. Okay. So you see this one here. You see the colors. You see a lot of it. The hourglass appearance is very obvious here. So this is good. So as you go outwards, the retinal layer is getting thinner. That should be expected, because if you now look at this sector zone around here, we're going to come to sector zone. You see that good. So these are the colors. The brighter the colors, the thicker, the more normal the thickness. The one is blue, and that means it's thinner than that is thinner. So the colors help us. That's the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map, or the temperature thickness plot or graph. These are all variations. Now, after you have looked at that map, the next thing to look at is a retinal nerve fiber layer deviation map. It's all on an OCT scan. So this is the deviation map. This is it here. So we've looked at the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map. Now this is the retinal nerve fiber layer deviation map. That is it. Now what is this deviation map all about? The retinal nerve fiber layer deviation map is overlaid on the OCT fundus image. The machine does that to illustrate precisely whether the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness deviates from a normal range. Data points that are not within normal limits are indicated in red and yellow. So just please note, in the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map, red and yellow are good. In the retinal nerve fiber layer deviation map, red is not good. Red is damaged or red is thinner. So that's it. Data points that are not within normal limits are indicated in red and yellow. But for the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map, when you see red, warm colors, it shows you normal thickness. Cooler colors, it shows you thinner areas. So that's what you're seeing here. Can you appreciate what is happening here? So there's damage here, isn't that so? It's LEDs here. So red for damage, all this here. So that's for the retinal nerve fiber layer deviation. The next step, you've looked at the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map, you've looked at the retinal nerve fiber layer deviation map. The next thing is review the normative comparisons. What are they? This is the color you will use that I used. This white, gray, not available data. Then white, green, what do they stand for? This is a color-coded indication of normative data comparison for retinal nerve fiber layer and optic nerve hair. Distribution of normals. The thickest 5% of measurements fall in the white area. Very, very thick, super thick, the white area, there are few. 90% of measurements fall in the green area, normal. And then, the thinnest 5% of measurements fall in the yellow area or below. The thinnest 1% of measurements fall in the red area. So it's a distribution of normal, but most of the people fall within, the thickness falls within the green area. 5% fall within the white area. And then this 5% fall within, so they take, that's what gave rise to these colors. Now the thinnest 1% of measurements fall in the red area. Measurements in red are considered outside normal limits. So these are actually the 1% of normals, but they are considered abnormal when we are using this. All commercially available OCT machines come preloaded with an internal normative database, enabling practitioners to classify a patient's retinal nerve fiber layer thickness as normal, green, borderline within 1 to 5% of the normal distribution, yellow, or outside normal limits, red. So that's where we have, it's good to know these colors. Now let's look at the charts that these colors are used for. There are retinal nerve fiber layer TSNIT graph. You also see that on the chart. So you see this is a TS, temporal, superior, nasal, inferior temporal graph. It's a line graph. The average thickness of the retinal nerve fiber layer, they are plotted in a line graph, and then the machine tells us whether it's normal or borderline or abnormal. So that's it. So this is the retinal nerve fiber, the thickness, the deviation map. Now this is the TSIN. I think one of them is the neuroretinal ring thickness. I think the first one is the neuroretinal ring thickness. Some printers will also have that. This is the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness on the TSNIT graph. So you can see the lines. Sometimes the two lines for the right and left eye are shown on that graph. And what you see, the right eye will be in the continuous black line. The left eye will be in the dotted lines. Where do the lines fall into? If they fall into the green area, then it's normal retinal thickness. You look at it in the temporal side, the nasal side, the superior side, the nasal, the inferior, and so on. So it might fall into the green area on the nasal side and fall into the red area on the inferior side. So you look at it properly to know where you get it. So that's the TSNIT graph. It's also, so retinal nerve fiber layer thickness along the calculation circle. Remember the scan is along a circle of 3.4 millimeter. Is displayed in a line graphic format and compared to age-matched normative data. That's how you get whether it's normal or abnormal or borderline. So that's how you get that TSNIT graph. The thickness of the retinal nerve fiber layer is measured 3.4 millimeter from the center of the optic disc. This distance was chosen because it offers the best compromise between the thickness of the retinal nerve fiber layer and inter-individual variability. The color of the line falls, the color the line falls determines whether the retinal nerve fiber layer is normal, green, borderline yellow, or abnormal, red. Now, this is another representation, normative comparative data. These ones are pie graphs or retinal nerve fiber layer thickness displayed in quadrants. So you've seen it displayed in a graph, TSNIT graph. You are also seeing it displayed in quadrants or clock hours. So these are quadrants, these are clock hours. This is very important, but I wonder why all this information. This one, if there's diffuse thinning, you'll see it. But this one will give you focal thinning. Will give you an idea of whether there are focal defects. So these are the color. From what we are seeing here, you can see yellow. These are already borderline areas, isn't it? This is normal. This is damage or thin. And you see here is what you have here, there, and so on. So this one gives you the focal defects, the sector or clock hour display of the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness. So this is compared to normative data in quadrants and clock hour or sector display. They call it either clock hour or sector display, and in quadrants. Quadrants may reveal diffuse thinning. Clock hours show localized thinning. So this is another representation of, so here you have, this is the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map, as another machine shows it. But around it you see another circle. Can you appreciate that circle? That has values and all red. This is like taking it in zones or in quadrants. That's another zone here. So this is a quadrant or sector representation of the retinal nerve fiber layer. So it's all green. Where you have red, you can see it as red or yellow. That is different, entirely different from this retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map. Are we together? Okay. Now, while the normative comparison provides a useful reference to determine whether retinal nerve fiber layer thickness is within normal limits, it must always be interpreted with caution. An area of red outside normal limits does not automatically mean the patient has glaucoma. And likewise, a completely green plot does not mean the patient definitely does not have glaucoma. Red disease is when the OCT decays, we've defined that. Always bear in mind that normative databases are not exhaustive and typically contain less than 500 patients. Additionally, they do not always include a range of ethnicities and refractive errors, both of which affect retinal nerve fiber layer thickness. Non-glaucomatous myopic eyes tend to have a thinner retinal nerve fiber layer and will therefore often be falsely classified as outside normal limits, when actually the problem is the high myopia. However, in spite of these limitations, identification of both diffuse and localized retinal nerve fiber layer atrophy with normative comparison has been shown to have reasonable levels of sensitivity and specificity, with sensitivity improving with increasing visual field defect. Normative comparison should be used to highlight possible areas of damage, prompting the need to carry out further tests. Example, dilated stereoscopic disc examination, extended visual fields, applanation tonometry, and corneal thickness calculation. Normative comparison should never be used or never be interpreted in isolation of other tests. Now, the next comparative data you might have on the OCT printer could be the neuroretinal rim thickness. This is also displayed in a graphic format, like the TSNIT, and compared to age-marked data. So you also see it in green, yellow, and red. So now we understand what that means. So if you see it in green, it's a normal neuroretinal rim thickness, depending on the zone you're looking at, the quadrant you're looking at in that graph. Now, so that's it. Here we have it, I think it's here. Is that the neuroretinal rim thickness? The next one is the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness. These are the TSNIT graphs. And these are the pie graphs, or the quadrants and the sector displays of retinal nerve fiber. These are the tomograms taking the scans. Sometimes from time to time you look at them to know how you're correlating with what you're seeing there. Then the next thing, I'm sure you're wondering what's this for. Let's come to that. Next, review the TSNIT, the TSNIT retinal nerve fiber thickness of the right and left eye for symmetry comparison. Some OCT printouts will also have a TSNIT graph comparing the right and left eye for symmetry. So, because, and this is very important, glaucoma is an asymmetrical disease. And confirmation of asymmetry is also of diagnostic value. So you can also have a TSNIT on the symmetry of the right and left retinal nerve fiber layer. The next thing, review the key parameters compared to that displayed in a table format. So that's what we are looking at. That's the key parameter. So this chart or this printout does not have the column for the TSNIT graph for symmetry. Some printouts have it. One of the printouts I gave you has that symmetry there. So if you look at it, you find out that the right and left retinal nerve fiber layer are almost the same. So there's no asymmetry. So now look at the table for the key parameters. Here you have information on various optic nerve head parameters based on the patient's age and disc size and so on that table. You have the cup disc ratio, vertical, horizontal. You have the disc area, the diameter, the rim, they're all in. So it's also compared to normative database and they also come in colors. So when you see it in red, something is wrong. When you see it in yellow, it's borderline. When you see it in green, it is normal. When you see it in gray, that means there's no available data to compare that information with. So they just leave it as gray. Or when the area is outside, for example, the disc that is too large, the Topcon OCT has found the disc area to be 2.8 plus or minus 0.5. If you have one that is about 5 millimeter squared, you might actually leave that area gray because there's no data to compare it with. So that's a table format for the key parameters of the optic nerve head and also the retinal nerve fiber layer where applicable. So these parameters will be shaded in red, yellow, green, and so on as we've talked about. Other data that may be displayed on the optic nerve head and retinal nerve fiber layer printer, depending on the machine you're using, could be the on-fast fundus image. You have something like this. This is the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness map. This is the on-fast fundus image. It shows boundaries of the cup. This is the cup. This is the disc. And this is the scan circle. 3.4 millimeter most times from the center of the disc. So it shows boundaries of the cup and disc and the retinal nerve fiber layer calculation circle. So the integrated retinal nerve fiber layer thickness deviation map shows deviation. So it can be integrated into that. It tell you whether there's a deviation from normal by the colors you see. Some scans will also give you fundus pictures, including the red-free zones. So as you're interpreting, you're also looking at the pictures. Some of the scan reports will also give you horizontal and vertical disc scans. They're extracted from the data cube through the center of the disc, and they show the RPE layer and these boundaries in black. Now, we are done with the optic nerve head and the retinal nerve fiber layer reports. Let's go to the macular GCC OCT scan printout. Are we together so far? Okay. Oh, it's such a low yes. So this is a new area, so we are going to dwell a little bit more on it. Glaucoma is a multifactorial optic neuropathy characterized by a loss of retinal ganglion cells with resulting visual impairment. The macular region, contains over 50% of all retinal ganglion cells and is likely an ideal region to detect early cell loss and changes over time because of the high density of cells. The retinal ganglion cells encompass 3 layers in the retina. The retinal nerve fiber layer, made up of the ganglion cell axons. The axons of the ganglion cell make up the retinal nerve fiber layer. 2, the ganglion cell layer, which we saw on that color display as a green under the red area, made up of the ganglion cell bodies. And 3, the inner plexiform layer, made up of the ganglion cell dendrites. So the retinal ganglion cells encompass these 3 areas. And now these 3 areas collectively are known as ganglion cell complex. They become thinner as the ganglion cells die from glaucoma. This RT view, Optoview, directly measures the thickness of these 3 layers and provides a unique analysis of the percent loss of these layers compared to an extensive normative database. The results are presented as significant loss of normal, which makes clinical interpretation straightforward. Now, this is how it does it. Cross-sectional beam scan from this OCT RT view in the macular region So you see the three areas well segmented: retinal nerve fiber layer, ganglion cell layer, the inner plexiform layer. So because of the high depth resolution available in this technology, the GCC can be separated from other retinal layers and studied. So that's another importance of some of these OCT. So the GCC scan data is displayed as, how do you display that? The retinal nerve fiber layer, you've seen how it's displayed. For the GCC scan data, it's displayed as a thickness map, just as we have for the retinal nerve fiber layer. Thickness map or the temperature thickness plot of the layer. The thickness plot, now we know, is color-coded, where thicker regions are displayed in hot colors, yellow or orange. And then thinner areas are displayed in cooler colors, blue and green. So you study what colors the machine, your own machine uses. The cooler colors, the hotter colors for this ROT view are yellow or orange. For the thinner areas, they use blue or green. So you see what is happening here. So this is a normal, this is what it should be. The bright colors around here, and then here you don't see those bright colors. This is a glaucomatous eye, healthy eye, glaucomatous eye. So the GCC map for a normal eye shows a bright circular band surrounding the macula, bright circular band surrounding the macula, representing a thick GCC from healthy ganglion cells. The center of the macula is thinner because there are no ganglion cells in this area. There are no ganglion cells in the fovea. So you expect these bright colors, and in glaucoma, as the ganglion cells are lost, the GCC complex becomes thinner, and the brighter color is now replaced by these darker colors, cooler colors. Now the next presentation of data from the MCs and from the GCC is the deviation map. We now have an idea of what this map. This map shows the percent loss from normal as determined by the normative database. For the retinal nerve fiber layer, you place over the fundus image and then check whether it's normal or not. So this map shows the percent loss from normal as determined by the normative database. The map is color-coded, where blue represents GCC thinning from 20 to 30% relative to normal. Black, a 50% loss or greater. So blue is a bit better than black, but they're still not normal. So it tells you the percentage loss from normal. And we now have the significance map. That's the next display, the next presentation of data for the GCC analysis, the macular GCC report. Shows regions where the change from normal reaches statistical significance. It is color-coded, where green represents values within the normal range, and orange and yellow represents borderline, and red represents an outside normal limit. So all deviation and significance map have a circular mask. Have a circular mask in the center of the macula, where the analysis is not possible due to an absence of ganglion cells in this region. So that's the picture, that's the thickness map, that's the deviation map, that's the significance map. So here there's damage, here is normal. All this area is not shown because there are no ganglion cells. That's the deviation percentage loss from normal. So it tells us that blue is when it's 20 to 30% from normal and so on. So this is the glaucomatous eye and the presentation. So you also have the GCC parameter table. That's another presentation for the macular GCC. So all the commercially available OCT from this OCT scan. So this is the macular thickness, the tomogram of the macular area, showing how thick it is. So this is a normal, and then this is a glaucoma with thinner GCC. You can see it, how thick here and how thin here. Can you appreciate that? Okay. So because they told me my time is almost up, I'm going to leave out this. These are presentations by other machines of various ways of presenting the macular GCC. Other machines have different ways of presenting. So you can also use the OCT for monitoring progression of glaucoma. Now, in spite of all the advantages of OCT, it still has limitations. There are causes of unreliable results. Although you have, common causes of poor signal strength will include media opacity, ocular surface, reduced tear film quality, and so. And normative database, we know the limitations using that. And then In using serial SDTO CT scans and following up a glaucoma patient, the clinician should also be aware that retinal nerve fiber layer thickness decreases with age in normal healthy individuals. So you should always take that into consideration. Software algorithm errors, including improper identification of anatomical brandings, can also lead to unreliable results. Poor patient cooperation can also affect what you're getting. Being purely dependent on optical principles, OCT requires a minimum pupillary diameter of 4 mm. High refractive error, decentered IOL, can compromise quality of OCT. Artifacts in OCT, blink artifacts. When the patient blinks, you can have something like this, whole defect in what you're seeing. And then head movement can also affect. It can give you this wavy contour. So just to confirm. And then eye movement can give you this discontinuation here, which you must also pick up. Shadows can also affect what you see. So blood vessels can give you these kind shadows, these vertical shadows. How well have you understood this lecture? I wanted us to do a pre-test, but there's no time for that. So let's go over. OCT in conclusion is safe, non-contact, non-invasive, reproducible, reliable, of great diagnostic importance indeed. In spite of all these impressive advantages, OCT still has limitations that will affect diagnostic accuracy if not taken into consideration during interpretation. Always correlate your findings with the clinical signs. Don't apply the information from OCT in isolation. Understanding the data presentation on an OCT scan report is a key to a good interpretation of the OCT scan. Do not ever compare the OCT findings from two different machines. Thank you very much for this.
For this stimulating lecture. We will take just 2 questions because our time is up. It's time for us to go for the president's lecture. 2 questions, please. That's perfect. So we understood it perfectly well. Thank you very much.
We're still ruminating over it.
At the end of this section, we will have little or no problem interpreting our OCT printout. So thank you. Thank you very much for attending. We will now move on to the hall for the president's lecture. Thank you again.